Hi, good evening, everybody. Just give me 1 minute. I'm just trying to ensure all the. Okay, so good evening, and we are live on a session called Must Read Books by Preeti Juneja. And today we're going to talk about a book called No Regrets. It looks like this. It's by Kaveree Bamzai. And okay, so it's by Kaveree Bamzai. Let me read a little snapshot on what this book is all about. So this is not a self-help book. It is a book that tells us what not to do, what to remember and what to forget. From being a mother to lessons learned from our own mothers, managing money to marriage, coping with pain and anger to taking ownership of our health and growing old, Kaveri Bamzai, first woman editor, of one of India's largest news magazines, a wife and mother of two boys and two dogs, tells us how to live a guilt-free life with a little help from a host of highly accomplished women. With sparkling advice from Naina Lal Kidwai, Ariana Huffington, Sudha Murty, Smriti Irani, Twinkle Khanna, and Sania Mirza, among others, No Regret is the go-to book as we fumble and stumble through life. So, she has covered some very important topics that we women keep thinking about most of the times and trying to find solutions as to what is the best way to sail through life and take care of these issues. Now, today I'm going to go to chapter 4, which is looking for work life balance. In this chapter, she has given advice by Sudha Murty and Lavanya Nalli of Nalli Silk Saris, and there's more. So, let me just go and read this book, this particular chapter. I've heard of work life balance, I've also heard of work life integration. So, let's see what there is to offer here. This particular session on must read books will be an hour or so. So you can, whether you're traveling back home and or you're taking a walk with your headphones on, I suggest that make the most of your time now and listen to what this book has to say. So, in the wonderful downtown abbey, which my younger boy despairs of and describes as a bubble gum for the soul, the great Dowager Countess, played by Dame Maggie Smith, went into a blue funk when Matthew Crawley assures Lord Grantham that he can help him run the estate, despite being busy over the weekdays as a lawyer in the Ripple. There are 24 hours in a day, and of course, I'll have the weekend, he says, while pouring custard over his dessert. What? What is a weekend? Says Dowager. Poor Dowager. It's not her fault. Downtown Abbey was set between the year 1912 and 1926. Weekends began in England only in the late 1800s, and that too for factory workers. Landed gentry were not expected to work too middle class, my dear. In the United States, the idea found complete fruition in 1914 when Henry Ford scaled back from a 48 hours to a 44-hour work week because he believed that too many hours were bad for workers' productivity. For working parents, strike that, working mothers, the weekend is the place to escape, catch up on housework, homework, and if possible, some self work. That is usually how work-life balance gets defined. Work hard over the weekdays and then play hard over the weekend. But then an entire school of thought has developed now on how to manage the work-life balance. You could do it in my favorite way, borrowed straight from the will, the slacker hero of Hornaby's 1998 novel about a boy. His way of coping with the days was to think of activities as units of time, each unit consisting of about 30 minutes. Whole hours, he found, were more intimidating and most things one could do in a day about half an hour. Laura Vanderkam, life coach and author of several self-help books, chose to look at the entire week instead of just 24 hours a day. In a book she shares, I know how she does it, how successful women make the most of their time. She asks us to look at 168 hours in a week and then plan our schedules. There is some good advice there to which I added my two bits. First, don't think of typical days. There may be some days in which a family emergency may claim your time, or a work deadline may simply put your schedule out of gear. So plan for the week rather than for the day. Second, reclaim your commute. Read audiobooks, listen to podcasts, meditate, catch up on your sleep, especially when you are being driven. Except if you are in a bus or a metro, set an alarm for yourself. Third, and this is my absolute favorite, don't allow housework to take too much of your time. So, if there are curtains to be sent to the dry cleaner, or the linen to be changed, or shoes to be polished, one more day of laxity isn't going to shatter the world peace. And as my writing icon Nora Ephron said at her commencement address at the Wesleys in 1996, of course, you can have it all as long as you embrace the mess. Fourth, in my view, is the most difficult. Give up things that are give up things that are the equivalent of black hole of time, which Vanderkam calls meaningless pursuits. How dare she? Unfortunately, there are also my all time pet hobbies. You know what those are? Scrolling through social media, binge watching much awaited shows, and gossiping with friends. All very important tasks which I consider vital for my sanity. But I get the point. The point is, as Van de Kamp says, that we don't build the lives we want by saving time, we build the lives we want, and time saves us. So it isn't easy, but it's worth practicing to free up your half an hour units from every day and maybe put them to better use. So stop scrolling through everyone's picture perfect Instagram post to run on the treadmill, or if you are me, walk very, very slowly. Or stop watching cute cat videos on Facebook for 15 minutes every day, or give up on the latest episode of Homeland, Unforgotten, or Big Little Lies, or whatever your current poison is, and catch a lecture from a writer who is in town. The possibilities are endless. The best way to look at time, I discovered, is to look at it in calendar years. Sure, keep your daily checklist handy, one for work and one for home, and they just keep getting longer every day. But also remember, though time is finite, it is also malleable. So a schedule that works for you in 1 year may not be right for you the next. As I grow older, I find my capacity to entertain certain givens that come with the workplace that have become frayed. Rather than continuing chafing at a bit, in such situations it is best to demand a readjustment of working hours. So step back, or as author Sudha Murty put in the Rediff interview in 2007, when one window closes, a door opens. So keep positive, be hopeful, as things will work out in some way or the other. Although she had given her husband N.R. Narayan Murthy rupees 10,000 she had saved to start Infosys and spent 4 years working as a primary breadwinner, she gave up full time work when her younger child Rohan was born because he had infantile eczema and she could not step outside their home for the fear of him contracting an infection. Later, when she became cook, programmer, clerk, secretary, and office assistant, when the couple moved to Bangalore, she had to step aside once again from joining the company and working for it officially. There's a book which recently Chitra Banerjee has written, and it was in Kunzum that I met Kaveree as well as Chitra Banerjee, talking on Sudha Murthy's life, Narayan Murthy's life, in a book called Uncommon Love. That again is a beautiful book. I've read it, and it's something that you can definitely think about purchasing and keeping it. She was shocked when Murthy said that he did not want a husband and wife team at Infosys despite her relevant experience and technical qualifications. As she says, I was pained to know that I would not be involved in the company my husband was building and that I would have to give up a job that I'm qualified to do and love doing. It took me a couple of days to grasp the reason behind Murthy's request. I realized that to make Infosys a success, one had to give one's 100%. One had to be focused on it alone with no other distractions. If the two of us had to give 100% to Infosys, then what would happen to our home and our children? One of us had to take care of our home while the other took care of the Infosys, and I opted to be a homemaker after all the Infosys was Murthy's dream. It was a big sacrifice, but it was one that had to be made. And I also remember my time that, somewhere even Sudha mentioned in a book, talking about being a wife of a CEO. So I have also been a wife to a CEO, and I was working with my husband, in the same company. So I know that it is impossible to give 100% if both husband and wife are working in the same company, and children do get affected. And the same ideology that Narayan Murthy shared was also shared by my husband, Juneja, back then. And I was not so mature enough to understand what it meant, like Sudha did, and it took me a while to absorb this, and it took me a while, but I kept working, and I kept. Even if it was flexi time, I kept working, and but yeah, I mean, for two people, husband wife couple, to run a company is not an easy job at all. Over a two period, Sudha Murty discovered writing, and she had then started teaching computer science at Christ College in Bangalore. It was a step down from her corporate job, first at Telco and then at Walchand, but she enjoyed it. Doing it for 8 years, she went on to become the head of the department, and since then, she had been running Infosys Foundation, spending half the month in the office and the other half traveling around the country. The lessons Murthy has learned. All women must work outside their homes, otherwise, they will not know what real life is like. The way you deal with people and situations is different. Women by nature are more emotional, but working allows us to build practical skills as well. Second, don't ever play the I am woman card, but play some cards, such as ensuring safe practice while being dropped home at night. Put too many conditions that you'll be closing doors for the next woman who wants to enter. As a working mother, try to spend all your quality time with your children. Be a role model for them. If you want them to pick up good practices, start with yourself. Make them respect your work, but also enjoy your free time with them. And I never pressurized my children to get good ranks. Instead, I wanted them to do their homework, develop a good reading habit, and compassionate to people, not lie and have a good moral values. Don't give your children easy access to everything. If you do, they will not learn good things. Make the most of the opportunities life throws at you. If it doesn't, create them. Work life balance will find automatically. You don't need experts to tell you that as women we can be quite hard on ourselves, but of course there are people who have spent a lifetime analyzing this, like the former president of Bernard College, Deborah Spar, who believes that as women have reached for power, they have gotten themselves stuck in an impossible quest for perfection. In Wonder Woman, Sex, Power, and the Quest for Perfection, she asked for honesty from working women on the work life balance. The point Spa makes is that if you're talking about running anything, whether be it a bank, a hospital, a television station, or a university, there are not 40 hours flexible work week jobs. If you're running an organization, it's 24 by 7. That doesn't mean that women can't do all those jobs, but it means that the women who do those jobs or aspire to those jobs have to either not have children or have partners to pick up the burden of the childcare, or have parents or in-laws who are deeply involved in rearing their children, and or they need to manage to have the children early in life and then move into those jobs. Women can't do them, but we need to be honest. There are certain kind of jobs that will never be part-time and flexi times or easily manageable. It's good to be honest, especially while talking to your young women and young men. If they really are committed to having an active, enjoyable professional career, and a working spouse and a couple of children, there are some professions or some fields within professions that will give them that flexibility. As Pa says, I don't see that as a stepping back, leaning out, opting out, or whatever verb you want to use. I see it as just being practical. She was ready to go into the foreign services until she realized it would make it difficult to have a family and a husband. She went into academia instead, which has given a lot of flexibility and a lot of control over her own productivity. Well, I see that with a lot of teachers and professors in schools and colleges, but now even for them life is getting tough at workplace, and a lot many times they bring work home and they're working from home as well, in addition to what the number of hours that they give back in school or college. So if you ask me, I really don't think there's anything called flexi working, or there is something called flexi working, but there's nothing like called fixed working hours, and I'm sure you're going to agree with that too. So, not everyone has that foresight, but most of us just stumble along. We find ourselves in our 40s struggling with teenage children, aging parents, and husbands with equally busy schedules. Or no husbands at all, either by accident or design. That's also when most of us are at the peak of our professional careers and discover that we really, really do like what we do. And that's what I found liberating when I watched the otherwise painfully self congratulatory TED Talk by Super TV producer Shonda Rhimes, accompanied by the obligatory celebrity memoir, The Year of Yes. The fact that she was willing to put out there is the convention defying confession: I like working more than being at home, and that she felt great because she set aside 15 minutes a day to play with her three girls. To be fair, 15 minutes in the life of a woman who runs at least three world conquering weekly soaps simultaneously is a lot of time. Hearing ourselves saying what Ryan said aloud to ourselves or otherwise can be therapeutic sometimes as we negotiate through tricky details of our lives, juggling between career, relationship, community service, and me time. The calendar year perspective allows us to change the order in which we rank the four. We have to let go of the guilt if at times the career comes before the relationship, which could possibly include children, or me time takes precedence over time with our mothers. So for far long time, our culture has made being a good mother the only ideal for a woman, whereas men have got away with choosing what they want to aspire to be: a good child, a good worker, a good spouse, or a good parent. It's time for women to have those choices as well, and perhaps not all, but at the same time. So what we are saying is that, like, a woman has to always fill the gaps and the man doesn't have to really. So now it's time that the man should also come and help women achieve or their aspirational goals, while the spouse or the man of the house also takes care of childbearing activities and tasks. So, if my mother's generation was keen to see their daughter in the workforce and work systematically towards that, our generation responsibility should be to ensure that we change the terms of engagement and that we talk of work life balance for men as much as for women. Same point that I just said, so that men understand that they cannot expect their wives to keep perfect homes, raise perfect babies, and have perfect bodies in absentia or as on allowance, and that they have to partner in parenting as well as they want happy marriages with happy, fulfilled women. This cannot happen overnight. It needs concerted effort by government, societies, companies, and organizations, and by families. Having it all shouldn't come at a price of doing it all the time. If women have traditionally stepped back from their careers, like Sudha Murty, men should be trained to do so too, and at all levels. Otherwise, the British feminist Laurie Penny puts it, while we all worry about the glass ceiling, there are millions of women standing in the basement, and the basement is flooding. And when the basement is flooding, you know who stays home? Yes, it's the woman. So when the child is sick and has to be picked up early from school, who does it? It's the woman again. And of course, when the cook has gone and there is no fresh food to eat, who has to come home early? Yes, you guessed it. and it's the woman again. And do we all have to end up like Kate Reddy, Alison Pearson's fictional character in I don't know how she does it, The Work Life of Kate Reddy, Working Mother. There she is at 1:37 a.m. at an average night, just having returned from a business trip to Sweden, banging store-bought mince pies with a rolling pin so that they all look homemade for her daughter's school Christmas party. This so that the other mothers, whom she calls mothers superior, don't diss her. She then goes out to the trash bin to hide the pie boxes so that Paula, her nanny, won't tell the other nannies that Kate cheated on the pies. She cleans up the kitchen and then takes a long time brushing her teeth so that her husband will fall asleep before she comes to bed. If they don't have sex, she can skip a shower in the morning and possibly have time for Christmas shopping on the way to work. Apart from a dodgy routine, hygiene there has been pretty much many nights for me. Only the pies have been replaced by homework that became increasingly complicated, often including full-scale professional engineering skills. I would, yes, I admit it, pay a professional holiday homework bureau. Yes, they exist, and to make these models, often there would be a battery charged windmill or a toy of a recyclable material. I would then unmake them just so they look like they were made by my 7-year-old genius child. It didn't help anyone. Said the child didn't become genius and the projects were binned as soon as they were marked. The point is that we don't want to end up like Kate, almost losing her husband, having to give up her demanding job, and retire to the country to rebuild her life and finally lean to bake the pies. There's a hint that she will eventually find some meaningful work, but it is clear that her days of wanting to be English equivalent of Wolf of Wall Street banker are over. She describes her decision to give up work as equivalent of becoming a missing person. One of the domestic disappeared. The post offices of Britain should be full of wanted posters of women who lost themselves in their children and never to be seen again, and no one wants to be the face of that poster. Please. As young woman, I most admire Lavanya Nalli, a vice chairman of the 90-year-old Nalli Silks with over 30 stores in India and abroad, and I love Nalli Silks, is a great example of someone who had shown the persistence to stay on course. Her father was initially quite ambivalent about Nalli joining the business, but she remained firm. Launching Nalli Next, a brand of designer saris for contemporary women in 2007, she helped the brand remain relevant to younger audience. She took off from the family business in 2009, getting an MBA from Harvard and marrying a classmate, Abhay Kothari, and worked for McKinsey and Company in Chicago for 3 years. When she returned to India with her husband in 2014, she worked at Mantra.com as a vice president for revenue and shopping experience. Coming back to the family fold only in 2015 as a vice chairman, heading the e-commerce and omni-channel platform. Since then, she had a baby, moved to Bangalore in 2017, and seen her husband set up his own business as an integrated coal supply chain solution. How does she manage, especially since both her parents and her in laws live in different cities? So here are Nalli's mantra. Focus on work-life balance, not focus on work-life harmony, not balance. Now that's something new. I think work-life balance is a misnomer. I try to strive for work-life harmony. This is how I've seen my own family members in the family business achieve joy and meaning out of their hectic lives. They put a lot of passion, energy, and time into their work, and in turn, the fruits of their labor is highly motivating and rejuvenating. And they, in turn, bring that energy into their personal lives, and they are more present and more involved parents and family members. Okay, so I've heard of, like I said, work life balance, work life integration, and now this is work life harmony, a new concept for me. Manage your energy, not time. My child is 17 months old. After the child, I have much less time to give many things done. I try to get an hour to myself to work on my personal fitness goals, and rest of the time is dedicated to work. And luckily, I have a very supportive husband who understands how important it is for me to have a fulfilling career. List your priorities and then see if you spend the hours in a week proportional to the activities and priorities listed out. Take out at least an hour a day for yourself. It could be a fitness, reading a book, or meditating, but ensure one Do one thing that replenishes you. Currently, my day is very hectic because a couple of the business units that I manage have experienced exponential growth, and now we are trying to hire the right talent at multiple levels. I guess work occupies a significant chunk of the day, but I always try to take out an hour at least for my personal fitness every day and every week, and I spend Sundays and family with family and friends and try to keep that time sacred. Okay, so I like the fact that women are paying attention to their fitness goals nowadays, despite a lot of work that they have professionally and the home to run. Understand that in the short run, sometimes you might need to prioritize as one aspect of your life over the other depends on whether where the need is more critical. You see flashes of the same advice in response to Deepa call. Deepak Kaul, my cousin and CIO of the Indian IT consultancy firm Sopra Steria, mother of twin daughters who are now 27. She's seen many young women engineers quit because children, husbands, or in laws. Paul's advice to younger women: hang on, as it is, this is just a phase of life. Don't live the later phases, phases regretting the decision you take now. So if you've decided to get back to work, don't regret it. You can't quit your job, but you can quit your job, but you can't quit being a mother. So being a mother redefines and rebuilds you. So let your professional life be a part of the rebuild and redefinition. Seek out mentors and in turn support other professionals and personally, which is why we have a lot more women community groups and forums nowadays, offline as well as online, so that women who have made it to higher levels at their workplaces can support other women both professionally and personally and give them advice as to how to overcome the challenges that they have. It will work out eventually. If needed be, rough it out for some time. So Call's been working for over 33 years non-stop, having been in ISRO and ONGC as well, with the longest break being her maternity leave. I did contemplate quitting when my daughter was were preparing for their boards, but with the support of my manager, I was able to have a time arrangement which worked well for the organization and me. She says today she's glad she stayed the course. I'll take a break and have some coffee. In the meantime, I'll check my comments in case if anybody has left any comments for me. No. Okay, so actually, I had sent this message about the event quite late. So I don't think it reached a lot of people. But if anybody is attending, please, you can also spread the word and tell the rest of the people. So I'm going to again repost the live for everyone to see. Okay. Don't brood over the brood. Don't we brood as women? We brood a lot. I think that's what our husbands tell us many a times. So, The Namesake is a book I can never read without weeping. In one of its most affecting passages after his father dies as the train heads towards New York, Gogol remembers a time when he was a child and his family had driven to the beach of Cape Cod. Jumpaleri writes they had driven as far out as they could, and then his father and he had continued walking out onto the rocks as far as possible. Unfortunately, his father forgot to bring a camera, but he tells Gogol, we will have to remember it then. He tells Gogol, try to remember it always. Remember that you and I made this journey, that we were together to a place where there was nowhere left to go. Families anchor us, bind us, and make us and unmake us. They teach us everything we know, everything we don't want to know as well. For women, the family is both something that gives them freedom and also something they occasionally want to flee from. Nowhere have I found this better expressed in Where You Go, Bernadette. Bernadette, a novel by Maria Semple. The novel is about a brilliant architect and MacArthur Genius Grant winner who retreats into the world of domestic anxiety after the birth of a daughter and lives in a state of unarticulated rage. That is until the day Bernadette disappears. Raise your hands, all of you who have ever had that dream to leave your family behind no matter how much you adore them and start afresh, all new, all over again. But of course, it is impossible. As we grow older, so do our parents and our children, and so do our extended families. Globally, the effect of recession, property prices, and the cost of care of the old and the young have combined to revive the practice of several generations living under the same roof. It's something India has known a little too well. Multi generational households, often with that of the West, what the West now calls the boomerang generation, people in their 20s returning to live with their parents. As with most phenomena, it's got the name the squeeze sandwich generation of the middle aged people facing the financial burden of caring simultaneously for their older parents and their own children and sometimes the children's children. Women bear the maximum brunt of this, and not only does this affect them financially but also psychologically, and some reports suggest even physically. A large study of 91,000 middle aged and older adults in Japan found that multiple generations living under one roof took a toll on women's cardiac health. The study found that women who lived with their spouses, children, and parents or parent in laws were at an elevated risk of developing cardiac diseases compared with their counterparts who lived with husbands only. These women were about three times more likely to be diagnosed with a coronary heart disease, and those women who lived with their spouses and children had twice the risk of the heart disease. In contrary, there was no evidence that living with multiple family generations affected men's cardiac health. The research reported in the medical journal Heart. And yet, there are women who manage to handle not only their own families but also the families they marry into with remarkable ease. Filmmaker Kiran Rao, someone I've known since the age of 8, is one of them. It's a well-known fact that in India, marriage is not only to the man but also to the plus one, his mother. But Rao acquired more than a mother-in-law when she married the actor Amir Khan. His children from his first wife Reena also became a part of the extended family. Yet Rao says acquiring Amir's family was the best part of the whole marriage thing. They are really quite wonderful and have given me so much love and are much more fun than the in-laws have ever known to be. I actually spend much more time than Amir does with his family because I enjoy it. And it's to Reena's and Amir's credit that they have raised two lovely kids and themselves maintained a warm relationship of mutual respect. Reena's is an integral part of the Khan's family, which is as it should be, and that's something I so admire about the family. The children, Junaid and Ira, are more friends to me, and in their 13 to 14 years that I've known them, I've seen them grow into fine young adults whom I enjoy hanging out with. Mothers of young boy Rao also spends a lot of time with her own parents, and so does she manage. Given that she also enjoys going out with friends and meeting people at least 3 to 4 times in a week. I can say one thing for sure that Amir Khan and Kiran Rao's life story is very coming across as a very honest story. And Kiran Rao, when she speaks up, she's not doing that, um, just as superficially. She's actually very honest. And knowing Kaveri, I can tell you that whatever is mentioned in the book is true. Rao's secret formula, apart from being much more social than her husband, most of my friends are not from the film industry. So it's actually quite relaxing. I managed to do all this, I suppose, because I enjoy it. It's the formal social gatherings and parties that tire me out, and I avoid them whenever possible. Amir Khan, as you all know, is not a very social person either. But Kiran is, and she likes to do and enjoy more with her circle of friends and people, which are non film industry. When it gets to me and I feel overwhelmed by the expectations from me, I try and get out of the city as often as possible, sometimes more than once a month, to somewhere in green near water and mountains and be quiet and breathe, and that's my safety valve. Not many people get that luxury, but yeah, it's a good thing to do. I left home at 18 to go to Sophia College, Mumbai for my bachelor's and then went to do my master's in Jamia Millia Islamia, Delhi. I couldn't wait to get out into the world, to be honest, and wanted to experience life with a capital L, and I have lived in hostels, shared bursatis with people, and done all the fun broke broke students in their early 20s do. I think sharing my life with all the people I did, apart from all the fun, made me richer for the understanding and confidence it gave me. I had to learn to get along, be flexible, and less judgmental, and how to work with people, a skill set that stood me in good stead. I have no magic mantra, but since, like most creative people and artists, I'm plagued by self doubt, I keep telling myself to live without fear of failure because I don't matter in the grand scheme of things, and that thought is just reassuring that there is this enormous universe that exists in all dimensions of time and space, and I'm a mere speck in its great churn. So I intend to live and love and work to the fullest, since that's really all that is in my hands. That's a great way to see, because universe is larger than life, larger than one person, human being. So, families are important, and not merely because they can offer support to working mothers. My friend Vandana Mehra, who worked with the World Bank in a job that required her to be on the road and in the air a lot, says her first travel trip after the daughter was born was an overnight trip to Manesar, and she wept copiously over of sheer guilt. Her daughter was about 8 months old at that time. Once she reached Manesar, the senior woman manager took her aside and gave her a sound advice that straightened her out. Mehra says, yeah, she told me I and 15 others had been hired for the task from among 5,000 applicants, and if I was going to start collapsing, they had probably made a wrong choice. She said my baby would not miss me at all, and every day they grow, they take one more step away. Her words stayed with me when, about 3 years later, I took a full time job with an international travel was a big part, and my parents and brother and sister in law stepped in when I traveled with excellent support from my father in law, my mother in law, had passed away, and my husband. Almost at at almost plus at almost all times, I was lucky to have good help, driver, and a cook. They all played very important roles till my daughter turned about 14 and flatly refused more nanning. But families are important for socialization too, to show us how to be. Shweta Markandeya's mother was a Supreme Court advocate, as was her father, and Markandeya is one of the two siblings raised by mother, who was in many ways pretty hands off. As an infant, Markandeya was taken care by her maternal grandmother, and she'd always looked at her as a mother figure. The sibling learned to be independent at a very early age, and they relied on each other for support. The engineering and the MBA graduate worked for 10 years for various companies, mainly in financial service sector, mostly in Mumbai, in roles in investment banking and investing. At times, the work was stressful, demanded long hours, and a fair bit of travel. The remuneration was also, in good years, great, and this helped to repay her education loan, take care of expenses, buy a house, and contribute to family's goals. Markandeya's her own choice, and Markandeya's has been married for more than 11 years now to someone of her own choice and whom she had known for a long time. Their daughter was born in 2011, 4 years after marriage, and when she was only 31 years old. She went back to work within 5 months of her daughter's birth, but the responsibility of parenting was much more than she had anticipated it to be. It was it has been great to be with my daughter and learn and unlearn so many things with her, but sometimes I do think that being the primary parent has tied me down, as it needs to be around for her takes priority over other things. And I also realize it's not a job that can be outsourced. It's not merely putting food on the table or changing diapers or ferrying the child from X class to Y class. There's no efficiency in parents. The focus changes as the child grows older, but there's no substitute of being around your child. Well, I think a lot of people feel like this, that, for certain jobs, only mothers are best. After a point, she couldn't manage work and home, and though she had her mother in law staying with them and a full time nanny, so Markanda quit, and I used online resources a lot to order baby supplies. I made sure to meet all the doctor appointments to wrap up the work and get back in time to spend time with the baby. In spite of all the help, there are some important issues only a parent can handle. For example, setting discipline, getting the child off the bottle, being there during illness. Somehow, all the burden still falls on the mother. At work and at home, I always felt that the people were doing me a favor because I was a mother. As Vikram Seth writes in A Suitable Boy, the ultimate book about the great Indian family, God save us from people who mean well. So, our extended family may cause us discomfort at times. Anyone who has had to vacate a bed or a bedroom for visitors will know that no, it's no fun. Wedding had to be endured, only sometimes enjoyed. Baby showers have to be thought of, funerals have to be attended, family lunches planned. As more and more of us live urbanized existence, vacation plans get collapsed and ancestral homes get disrupted, or, as in case of most of the Kashmiri pundits like myself, are simply lost to time and terrorism. We have become the last generation to know the pleasures of extended time with the extended family. It taught us patience, generosity, flexibility, and loyalty. It taught us to sleep on mattress 10 to the ground. It also taught us to wait for a dinner at the night of a long haul and get only the gravy of the mutton dish. It taught us to be inventive with our time, stay childish plays, and play various games. It also taught us how to speak to the olders, to those older than us, and relate to those younger than us. Our families are also where the deepest patriarchy and the narrowest mindsets were and are embedded. It is where marriages are still arranged and women are still expected to be wives and mothers first, and children are meant to be common property. It is where memories, good, bad, and ugly, are made. So, why should these families of uncles, aunt, and their many children be suffered? Well, they tell us who our parents were, for one, and Indians are not particularly good at documentation, so perhaps the siblings are the best source of information to understand the parents and ourselves. Families are also important for ritualistic knowledge of birth and deaths and everything in between. These ceremonies connect us to who we are, no matter the religion. Families are important for our identities, the beginnings of all our understanding of religion, caste, gender, and even sexuality. We may well want to escape their stranglehold, but it's possible only if and when we are able to truly comprehend their nuances. As more mixed marriages take place, it is the duty to educate our children in their twin cultures, show them, or at least try to show them, the best of both possible worlds. Let them be an Indian-born confused Desi, a healthy appreciation of cultural differences in the prerequisite of democracy, in which there is no fear of the other, something that we were increasingly and demonically seeing at work. We may not always succeed, but it's worth making an effort. So this is good. I like this, and I'll tell you one thing from my own experience. So I was raised in South Delhi and spent good number of years here, and then after marriage, when I had to move to another city and live there for another 15 years, so it was practically same number of time in Delhi and same number of time or number of years in the other city. So when my child was born, I was able to have the best of both worlds, and probably did make him a bit confused but in the beginning, but I tried to get him the best of Delhi and the other city, and together, in all sense, we had the best. But there was a time when, as he was growing, education was priority and I had to choose one over the other. So I decided to come back to South Delhi so that he can get a good education. And um, and that's how priorities set your life, and everything is very dynamic, and so you have to be flexible and see what works best in your situation. So as a mother, it's not always about laying the food on the table, rightly said, but it is about making decisions which eventually will impact in your children's lives, which are more important. And so one has to look at it from a very larger perspective than getting into the nitty gritties of the day to day. And therefore, like Kaveree said, have a schedule or a calendar of the year, not just a day to day or a weekly calendar set for yourself. On that note, thank you so much for joining me, and more chapters later on as we continue reading the book No Regrets by Kaveree Bamzai, and would highly recommend you to also get a copy for yourself from Amazon or the nearest bookstore, because I feel that this book needs to be reread, and this book needs to be there somewhere close to you at your place all the time. Thank you so much.